Thanks for checking out Symphony on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos for updates.
I want to ask the question is this: how has Nigeria
on subsidy removal, I have said for the opt-in time that this is desirable in the interest of the growth of Nigeria. Of course, everybody will have their own perspective, but from where I sit, I believe that subsidy is the best thing for Nigeria, not just for the industry. And so far, the discussions with stakeholders is still ongoing. But I also bring it to your attention that today subsidy, if the president assents, or when the president assents to the PIB, will become a matter of law, because it is already in the PIB that petroleum products will be sold at market-determined prices. Why that is important, I have always said. Some people have taken me on it. I've even seen an editorial on it. But of course, you know, in a country of 200 million people, opinions will differ. But I am saying that removal of subsidy has the potential of unlocking a lot more funds for deployment to development. Unfortunately, what we are doing by way of subsidy is like cutting our noses to spite our face. Because we take it from this end, we will definitely not see it at the other end. If you are doing a business and you decide to take from the operational side additional funding, it adds to the cost of the business, and you will find it at the end, at the profit end. At the profit end, that money will no longer be there. And that is what we are having in Nigeria. We are spending this money to subsidize PMS. So at the point of development, the money is no longer available to us. So whichever way, it is we that can make this difference and make this change. And I believe that subsidy is what is desirable for Nigeria, and discussions with labor and with other stakeholders is still ongoing. Also, we are working out the details of how to come up with an alternative fuel, which we have continuously announced. Remember that in December last year, Mr. President rolled out the Autogas program. Autogas is to give an alternative fuel for our cars, so that Nigerians can take advantage of it. Gas is cheaper than PMS, so at least it gives you a choice when you go to the pump. If you find PMS, which will be deregulated at that time, too expensive, then you have an alternative, and then of course you can take advantage of gas. These are all the things we are working out, and when we are done with the engagement with the stakeholders, and also fine-tuning this alternate fuel, then we'll roll out, and I'm sure that Nigerians, all of us, will be happier for it. The update on refinery rehabilitation. The rehabilitation of Port Harcourt refinery is ongoing, and I want to also announce that in the next few weeks, the rehabilitation of Warri and Kaduna refinery will also commence. So with this, I want to say that, look, the last time I checked with my team, we have ticked all the boxes as far as our mandates are concerned. But, well, I will leave that for another day. The OPEC quota for June, OPEC quota is around 1.554 million barrels per day. 1,554,000 barrels per day. The last meeting, that is for crude only, not including condensate. The last meeting was deadlocked in a way, I agree, going to the other question. But that really doesn't indicate a crack in the OPEC family. In a family, as we call it, I mean, OPEC is a family. And in OPEC, it is not the majority that wins. OPEC is a consensus organization. So everybody in the team, in the family must agree before we can move forward. So if 99% of the people are on one side and 1% are on one side, OPEC will not still agree. And that is really what happened to us in the last meeting. Everybody else has agreed, but one country disagreed. Of course, they have reasons why they disagreed, and we are trying to resolve that issue with them. So it doesn't indicate a crack in the OPEC family at all. It is just the way things work with OPEC. Everybody must agree before we move forward. And as it is now, we're not really losing much. After the so-called deadlocked meeting, prices have not plummeted dangerously because the world market, the global market is recovering nicely. The outlook is that there will be a requirement of about 6 million barrels for the rest of the year. So if you look at it, because the market really still demands a lot from us producers, whatever we are doing in OPEC has not affected the market as such. So the prices are still within the range that we are happy with. But meanwhile, we as OPEC members are still working out and ensuring that when we meet next time, we'll be able to resolve our problems and move on. If you look at the issues that came up, it's just it's a small issue that this country disagreed with, and they are looking at it from a different perspective, and I believe that is something that we will soon resolve. I don't know if I've answered all the other questions, because I've taken a few questions together because the questions were similar. So I believe that I've taken even the question on if we are losing anything as a country due to the OPEC quota has been answered. But let me say this, we really don't lose anything because, as I say, sometimes you lose from this side, but you gain from the other side. You all were here in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic when prices plummeted to dangerous levels. In fact, some grades of crude were sold for negative. That means that you have to pay for people to come and evacuate your crude. It was that bad. So in that kind of situation, if you have to cut your production in order to shore up the prices a little bit, it is in your interest. So the quota helps you to gain on the price side. Without the quota, You will not gain on the price side. The price, you can produce 10 million barrels and sell at zero. That would be useless. But on the other hand, with quota, you can produce less and sell at an optimal price. That is what OPEC does, to balance the market, so that at least producers, consumers, and investors are all catered for. So yes, we are complying with the OPEC quotas, but it really doesn't hurt us, because the danger of not complying is that prices can go the other way around. So that everything you are producing can even fetch you less than what the less that you are producing will fetch you. So that is why we believe that it is still the right thing to do. And whenever OPEC gives us our quota, we do everything to see how we can achieve that quota. Yes, right now, we are actually completely compliant with the quotas that the quota that has been allocated to us as Nigeria. Is there any other question I haven't answered?
Is everybody satisfied with their questions?
Is there another question, or one of the questions I haven't answered?
A different one.
Okay.
Okay, we had 4 before, so I will permit just 2. Thank you.
No, you count the ones now so that we can. There are, of course, different kinds of questions. Some questions are very well-meaning. Other questions are a little bit. Yeah. Anyway, on the Morocco-Nigeria gas pipeline, we are still at the stage of feasibility study. The studies have actually gone very, very far, very advanced, and we have a tentative figure of how much this pipeline is going to cost, which I'm not going to announce yet. But the pipeline is going to continue from the West African gas pipeline, which is already in place. The West African gas pipeline is already functional. It takes gas from Nigeria to Benin Republic, to Togo, and to Ghana. So that pipeline is already functional. We are thinking about extending it to Senegal and also other countries in West Africa. And from there, moving it on the coastline to Morocco. Of course, you know Morocco shares boundary with Europe. So once it gets to Morocco, we believe we can hook up with the Morocco pipeline system and take our gas straight to Europe through pipeline. That project is still on. Mr. President is very committed to it. The King of Morocco is also very committed to it. And we believe that we'll take it to an advanced stage before the end of this administration. The harmonization of the PIP is ongoing. Of course, both houses have passed, both chambers passed the bill. But there are slight differences in the versions passed by each chamber. So they have to sit down in what they call a conference and harmonize those areas of difference. That process is ongoing, and I believe that from my discussions with them, that process will be through by the end of this week. Gas, we know that we are really focused on gas. There are various uses of gas that we are focused on. We are focused on utilization of gas for our cars, which is auto gas. We are also focused on increasing gas penetration in terms of domestic usage, household usage of gas, which I believe is what you were referring to. Our gas penetration in Nigeria is one of the lowest in the whole of Africa. Very sadly, you and I agree that most of our rural people do not use gas. Most of even the peri-urban people do not use gas. Gas is mostly a fuel, a cooking fuel used in the urban areas. And even in the urban areas, it's mostly used by the elite. So how do you encourage gas usage? Because we believe that this is going to help in a lot of ways, even protecting our forests. Because you go to your village, you see a lot of trees being felled for firewood, which is not good for our environment. So we believe that taking gas to our people in the rural areas will help to even preserve our forests and preserve our environment. So how do we do it? Yes, you talked about gas prices. Yes, I don't know the details of how much the retail price of gas is today. But what we want to do is to try to see how we can ease it up for the rural user. Wherever the price of gas is, it will still be very expensive for a rural person to invest a lot of money, to invest that money to buy a full cylinder of gas, whatever the gas price is. Because the price of gas must also incentivize the producer. The gas price must also be good for the person who is producing so that he will continue to produce the gas. So what we have now decided to do is to see how we can allow the rural person to pay for the gas as he needs it, not to pay for the whole cylinder whenever he needs to use gas. Because we saw that one of the biggest problems standing between the rural people and the usage of household gas is the pricing, the cost. They don't have, I don't know how much a cylinder will cost. 6,000 naira to go and buy a cylinder of gas every time they need to cook with gas. So it's not, they are not going to have that kind of money. So what we are now doing is to now introduce fractional filling. So you have a device, for example, on the gas, on the cylinder, which allows you to access just how much of gas you can afford. If you can afford 200 naira worth of gas, you pay for 200 naira worth of gas. The gas cylinder will dispense 200 naira worth of gas to you. And then when you need again, you buy, because that is how they use kerosene. Kerosene, they don't have to go and buy a gallon of kerosene all the time. If they can afford a bottle, they go and buy a bottle. If they can even afford half a bottle, they buy half a bottle. So it is easier for them, it's cheaper for them, more sustainable for them to use kerosene. That's why they stick with kerosene. So they use it to cook in their stoves and, of course, burn their firewood. But we believe that when we are able to make this fractional filling possible, the rural people will be attracted to it because it will be faster for them, and it actually also will cook better. And it will be cleaner. So whichever way they look at it, it will be better for them. So our challenge, the challenge before us, is how to make it affordable for them so that they can buy. Of course, the gas pricing issue will be discussed later, maybe in a different forum. It's a bigger subject matter that we cannot take here. Then somebody asked about Atala. Atala field, we have spoken about many, many times. I don't know why Atala alone is being singled out. about 11 marginal fields were revoked for non-performance. The holders of these fields held them for 17 years without producing this field. And as a country, we lose money. Because if you are producing this field, the country too will be getting royalty and other payments and taxes from your production. But when you hold an asset and you just keep it and you are not producing that asset, the country is losing money ultimately. So after 17 years, the president in his wisdom decided to revoke those assets. Revoking means that it is no longer your asset. So if it is no longer your asset, what is your business? Whether it's been given to somebody else. Bayelsa State government, are they denying that they didn't run this asset, suboptimally? They are not. I'm sure they are not arguing with that. They're not arguing with the revocation. So I don't want to go into all the details. I know what you want to, where you are going to, and I don't want you to misquote me. So just know that this asset was not singled out. It was revoked along with a lot other assets for the same reason. And I don't want to now single out one of those assets and discuss it. So if you are talking about all the assets, then we will discuss, but I don't want to single any one of those assets and discuss it. Because I happen to come from Bayelsa State too. I don't know where you are from. Where are you from? You see now. So I know where you are driving at. Well, the last question was on my role as special envoy to Equatorial Guinea and Congo, South Sudan, and Gabon. That was very successful. It was really very successful. And we have presented our report to OPEC, and OPEC commended us for the good job that we did.